There she is, my milk of magnesia. God must have broke the mold when he made you. Come here.
Have you ever had a hug like this before?
It's so nice.
If you had the opportunity to meet the perfect girl, what does that look like on paper?
Like, how tall are you?
This guy.
She's funny, she's kind, she's sweet, she's cute. She's got all the characteristics I want. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The internet just exploded with one question nobody ever thought they'd ask. Is Scott Disick dating Khloé Kardashian? It sounds impossible, right? The idea alone feels like crossing a family line so wild it could only happen in the Kardashian universe. But when a few mysterious photos, flirty comments, and inside jokes started making the rounds online, fans instantly lost it. Was it real? Was it a stunt? Or had the family's tangled history reached a point where nothing was off limits anymore? Within hours, Twitter threads were dissecting every look, every caption, and every past interaction between Scott and Khloé. And as memes flooded the timeline, all eyes turned to one person, Kourtney Kardashian. Because if this rumor had even a grain of truth, it wasn't just another celebrity headline. It was personal. For years, Scott and Kourtney's relationship defined early Kardashian drama. Passion, chaos, breakups, and reconciliation rumors that never seem to end. Add Khloé, who's always been the bold, outspoken sister defending Kourtney while roasting Scott, and you get a triangle that nobody wanted to imagine, until now. And that's why people weren't just gossiping. They were waiting to see how Kourtney would react. Would she clap back? Laugh it off? Or would she finally expose what's really going on behind the Kardashian facade? Because here's the thing. Kourtney didn't need to say a single word. Her reaction came through in quiet gestures, cryptic quotes, and a silence that felt louder than any tabloid headline. But what triggered that silence? And how did one absurd rumor about Scott and Khloé reopen old wounds that Kourtney thought were long healed? Let's rewind to how this all started, because the truth behind this rumor might just be more tangled than anyone expected. So where did this insane rumor even come from? Like most Kardashian stories, it started small. A harmless-looking comment, a half-joking photo, and the internet's ability to turn anything into breaking news. It began when fans noticed Scott and Khloé appearing unusually close in a few family clips. There was a moment on the Kardashians where they teased each other, exchanged that familiar, flirty, friendly banter, and suddenly TikTok detectives decided, something's going on here. Then came the Instagram chaos. A fan account posted a side-by-side photo of the two with the caption, "Wouldn't it be wild if..." And that single sentence was all it took. Within hours, gossip blogs picked it up. Someone claimed they were seen together at a private dinner, even though it turned out to be a full family event. Another blog swore Scott left a heart emoji on one of Khloé's selfies, which of course he does all the time. But this time, the narrative stuck. Fans began stitching old clips, adding dramatic music, and comparing body language like forensic analysts. The theory snowballed so fast that even mainstream outlets had to ask, wait, could this actually be true? And that's when the mood shifted. What started as a joke suddenly carried weight, because the idea of Scott dating another Kardashian wasn't just messy. It felt like the final betrayal in a story that already had too many twists. Behind closed doors, sources say the family group chat was going off. Kris Jenner allegedly stepped in to stop the speculation before it burned through social media. But for Kourtney, it was déjà vu. She'd seen how Scott's every move became headline material. But hearing this rumor, involving her own sister, cut differently, and while the internet laughed, Kourtney went quiet. But her silence wasn't confusion, it was calculation. Because before anyone realized it, that silence would become her most powerful statement yet. To really understand why this rumor hit so hard, you have to rewind more than a decade, back to when Kourtney and Scott were still the fiery couple everyone couldn't look away from. They weren't just partners. They were the couple that built the early Kardashian storyline. Love, chaos, and emotional whiplash, all playing out on national TV. One week they were inseparable. The next they were breaking up in front of millions. And through it all, there was one person constantly in the middle. Khloé. Khloé was the sister who never bit her tongue. She called Scott out when he messed up, defended Kourtney when she broke down, and somehow still managed to be Scott's friend when the dust settled. Fans loved their dynamic. It was raw, sarcastic, and weirdly affectionate. So much so that viewers started joking online. Khloé and Scott have more chemistry than Kourtney and Scott ever did. At first, everyone laughed it off. Even Kourtney joked about it on camera. But as the years went by and the internet blurred the line between humor and reality, that running gag turned into something darker. Kourtney had moved on, trying to build peace in her life. But the public never let go of the Scott and Khloé connection. Every playful comment, every inside joke between them reignited old gossip. And each time it pulled Kourtney right back into the chaos she'd spent years escaping. Behind the cameras, sources have said Kourtney always trusted Khloé, but that doesn't mean it didn't sting to see fans romanticize the man who once broke her heart, now paired even jokingly with her own sister. So when that rumor reemerged in 2025, it wasn't just noise, it was history repeating itself. Only this time the stakes were higher. Kourtney wasn't the same person she used to be, and she wasn't about to let a recycled headline drag her back into old patterns. But Scott? He never seemed to learn. And that's where the story takes a sharp turn, because his behavior right after the rumor broke only made things worse. By now, everyone knows Scott Disick's dating history is practically a Hollywood subplot of its own. From Sophia Richie to Amelia Hamlin, his relationships have always made headlines. And not just for who he's dating, but how young they tend to be. The tabloids built an entire personality around him, the charming, troubled ex who never really grew up. For years, that reputation followed him everywhere. Every time he was spotted with a new model or influencer, fans rolled their eyes and said, "Classic Scott." But there's a reason people stayed invested, because behind all the chaos, Scott's story was always tangled up with Kourtney's, no matter who he dated. Every relationship was compared to her. So when the rumor about Khloé dropped, fans didn't even stop to fact check. They just leaned in. Because for once, this wasn't another teenage model or influencer. It was a Kardashian. The forbidden, uncomfortable twist no one could ignore. And that's where public perception split in two. Some fans defended Scott, saying the internet had taken things too far, that his playful friendship with Khloé was being twisted into something it wasn't. But others weren't so sure. They pointed out how often Scott crosses boundaries for attention, how he jokes too far, flirts too freely, and loves keeping people guessing. To outsiders, it might have just been another celebrity rumor. But to Kourtney, it was familiar and exhausting. She'd spent years watching Scott's headlines overshadow their co-parenting, her privacy, even her peace. And while this particular rumor may not have been true, it felt believable because it fit the same pattern Scott had built for himself. Drama first, reflection later. That's why when the story blew up online, Kourtney didn't post angry statements or clarifications. She didn't defend anyone or deny anything. Instead, she went completely quiet. But that silence didn't come from indifference. It came from experience. Because if there's one thing Kourtney had learned, it's that Scott's biggest problem was never the rumor itself. It was the attention that came with it. And her next move proved just how much she'd changed. When the rumor about Scott and Khloé started taking over social media, everyone expected Kourtney to say something. After all, this was her ex, the father of her children, and now nigh allegedly connected to her own sister. If there was ever a time for her to speak up, this was it. But instead of public outrage or an Instagram rant, Kourtney did what nobody expected. She said absolutely nothing. No press statements, no interviews, not even a comment denying it. Just silence. But that silence spoke louder than any tweet ever could, because almost instantly fans started reading between the lines. Kourtney posted a few cryptic quotes. Things like, "Not everything deserves your reaction," and "When you know your worth, you don't chase explanations." To her millions of followers, that was the message. That was the clapback. It wasn't petty or emotional. It was strategic. Kourtney knew exactly how this game worked. She'd been part of the Kardashian publicity storm long enough to understand that sometimes the best way to expose a lie is to let it burn itself out. Meanwhile, the tabloids couldn't handle the mystery. They twisted her posts into theories. Kourtney subtly shades Khloé. Kourtney sends hidden message to Scott. Every emoji, every photo of her morning coffee became a decoding exercise for fans who wanted to know what she really felt. But behind that calm front, sources close to Kourtney said she was hurt, not because she believed the rumor, but because it reminded her how easily people still dragged her personal life into chaos. She had spent years finding peace, building her family with Travis, and finally stepping away from the endless Kardashian drama, only for it to find her again. Still, she refused to give the story power. No emotional posts, no dramatic statements. Just calm, confidence, and silence. Because deep down, Kourtney knew something the internet didn't. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's control. And that calm would soon be tested again. Because behind closed doors, the tension in the Kardashian family was starting to boil. While the internet was busy dissecting captions and emojis, things behind the scenes were far from calm. According to several insider reports, the Kardashian family group chat was on fire. Kris Jenner, the ultimate crisis manager, allegedly stepped in immediately, trying to contain the story before it spiraled further. For a family that's built an empire on publicity, even they knew this rumor crossed a dangerous line. Khloé was reportedly embarrassed, insisting that the idea was ridiculous and disrespectful. She and Scott had always shared a brother-sister dynamic, joking, roasting each other, and occasionally teaming up to tease Kourtney. But this rumor made even their usual banter feel awkward. As for Scott, insiders say he was freaked out, not because he felt guilty, but because he knew how bad the optics were. The rumor didn't just make him look messy, it made him look like he'd betrayed the one person who'd always stood by him through his worst moments. Kourtney. So he did what he always does. Tried to do damage control in his own way. Sources close to the family claimed that Scott reached out to Kourtney privately, wanting to clear the air before things got worse. He told her not to believe the noise, that the rumors were insane, that he'd never cross that line. And Kourtney listened. Calmly, quietly, like someone who'd heard it all before. She wasn't angry. She was just done. She'd reached the point where words no longer mattered. Meanwhile, Travis Barker, her husband, reportedly told her to let it go. He'd seen how Scott's drama had followed her for years and didn't want it seeping back into their new life. "Don't give it energy," he supposedly said. And for once, she agreed. Still, something about this particular rumor hit differently. It wasn't just another headline. It was a reminder of how fragile peace can be when your past keeps following you. And just when Kourtney thought the noise might finally fade, one name brought it all back into focus: Travis Barker. Because if Scott thought he was over Kourtney, what came next proved otherwise. For years, Scott had convinced himself that he'd moved on. He had new girlfriends, new parties, new distractions, but deep down, Kourtney was still the one name he couldn't shake. And when she married Travis Barker, it was like the final chapter he never wanted to read. At first, Scott tried to play it cool. Publicly, he said he was happy for them. Privately, he struggled to watch someone else live the version of life he'd always promised her, but never delivered. Sources close to the family described it as quiet jealousy, the kind that doesn't explode in public but lingers in subtle ways. Late-night texts, weird social media timing, inside jokes that suddenly stop being funny. So when the Khloé rumor surfaced, it did more than stir the internet. It reopened something in Scott. For years, fans accused him of chasing attention, but this time, it felt like he was chasing relevance. Kourtney had built a new life, a marriage, peace, stability, while he was still being defined by chaos. And the irony? The more people speculated about him and Khloé, the more attention Kourtney's reaction got. Every time her name trended, so did his. It was the same push-pull dynamic they'd had for years. No matter how far apart they were, their stories always collided. Travis, on the other hand, didn't play those games. He wasn't interested in feeding tabloids or clarifying rumors. His focus was Kourtney, her calm, her privacy, her peace. But behind that quiet confidence, even he could sense that Scott wasn't over her. Insiders say Travis knew exactly what was happening, that Scott's rumored flirtations, whether real or exaggerated, were a reaction to losing control of a story he once owned. The Kardashians were now moving forward without him, and he hated it. And that's when Kourtney decided enough was enough. No statements, no confrontations, just a move so subtle and powerful that it turned the entire narrative upside down, because the next time Kourtney reacted, she didn't use words, she used presence. After more than a decade of public chaos, rumors, and recycled heartbreak, Kourtney Kardashian finally did something the old version of her never could: nothing. When the Scott and Khloé story reached its peak, everyone waited for the explosion. They expected the dramatic unfollow, the shade post, the sister tension, maybe even a teary confession on the Kardashians, but instead, Kourtney posted a single photo, a quiet morning moment, coffee in hand, sunlight spilling across her kitchen counter. No captions, no hashtags, no hidden message, just peace. And that image hit harder than any statement ever could. Fans flooded the comments with applause, calling it the calmest revenge ever, because this time, Kourtney wasn't reacting from pain or anger. She was standing in clarity. She had spent years being defined by Scott's chaos. Every time he slipped up, the world ran to her for a reaction. Every girlfriend he dated, every controversy he created, somehow, it always came back to her. But not anymore. This time, Kourtney didn't chase the narrative. She let it collapse on its own. She knew the truth didn't need defending, and silence wasn't weakness. It was mastery. Behind the scenes, the family reportedly followed her lead. Kris stopped feeding the media, Khloé made a joke to diffuse tension, and Scott, for once, stayed quiet. The rumor faded as quickly as it started, but what remained was a reminder of how much had changed. Kourtney Kardashian wasn't the same woman who once cried over Scott on a reality show. She was a mother, a wife, and a woman who finally learned the most powerful response is often no response at all. Because in a world where every headline screams for attention, peace is rebellion. So maybe she didn't react to Scott dating Khloé, because she didn't have to. She's already won the one battle he keeps losing: learning to move on. And as the cameras roll, one thing's become crystal clear. The drama might keep chasing Kourtney Kardashian, but this time, she's not running anymore.